All right. Hello, everyone. Just a quick mic test. Can you let me know if you can hear me?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we'll get started. Let me just do the screen share here first. Okay. So we're still on the topic of design patterns. And we said that design patterns are general solutions to general problems. Obviously, we start off with a concrete problem, and it's up to us to decide what is this nature of what is the general problem of this particular concrete problem so that we can assign it a design pattern, a general solution, and then we cater that general solution to that specific problem. And we said we have three types of design patterns. They come in three different flavors. The first of which is creational design pattern. The second which is, somebody say it out. Creational design pattern, structural design patterns, number two, and number three, and number three, behavioral design patterns. Okay, so wake up, guys. Okay, I think it's still in sleep mode. Okay, now in the last lecture, at the end of the last lecture, we've covered the first creational design pattern. That's the factory design pattern. And the factory design pattern uses the delegation form, the delegation type of engine. And delegation type engine is there to, shield away from the client the details of the specific concrete class that it wants to produce, so that basically it just tells the factory design pattern, the factory class, to go ahead and produce a class for me, and it just does that automatically for it. All right. Again, this is kind of like you going to Extra or going to Al Jarir bookstore and having to give 60 different specifications in order to buy an iPhone versus just saying, I want an iPhone Max Pro 12. Okay, that's the difference, right? So we don't want the client to have to be bothered with all the details of the specifications. And honestly, the client doesn't really care. And the good thing is that if, we don't want, if the client knows too much, then there's maybe a little bit room for abuse. Okay. The one characteristic about creational design patterns is that it produces one type of object. Okay. Most of the time, one object at a time, but nonetheless, it's one type of object. The next design pattern we're going to look at is called the abstract factory design pattern, which is what you see in the slide in front of you. And as you see in the slide in front of you, the abstract factory design pattern. Let me just pull up the pen over here. Pen. Okay. Um, we have an abstract factory that is sitting on top of a number of factories. Okay. Those factories, the purpose of those factories is to produce the specific products, all right, that are of different types. Okay. Now, basically, what the point here is, um, and a main difference between the abstract factory design pattern and the just a regular factory design pattern is that the we are producing sets. With abstract factory, we're producing sets of objects, and those sets of objects. Here's the key thing: the sets of objects actually have different types. All right. Now, like I said before, the creational design pattern, the factory design pattern, we tend to produce one object at a time, and it's the same type. I could have produced two or three objects at the same time, but as long as they are the same type, it's still a factory design pattern. Okay. So remember the computer assembler example from the last lecture. How do we produce three computers or four computers at the same time? Not a big deal. Okay, it's still a factory design pattern. Now, the difference here is that with the abstract factory, we're producing objects of different types. Okay, A is different than A1. A2, sorry, is different than A1, and that's why I need a concrete factory here. I need a not concrete factory over there. Okay, both of them will be related to a higher level up abstract factory, which the client deal with immediately. Now, think of it this way. All right. Think of it this way. You want a product. The product is comprised of two things, okay? A and a B, okay? It's not like you just going to Jarir and asking for a phone. You're asking for something that is consisting of two things, okay? For example, an entertainment set, okay? Speakers and a television, all right? Now, again, what we don't want, we don't want the client to know all the details of every sound set and every television, and even we don't actually even want the client to go talk to the guy who is dealing with the speakers, which is what really actually happens in the real world, and the other guy was dealing with the sound set. Okay, we want the client to deal with one person who is kind of like a supervisor of the other, other employees. Okay, so a factory class that is a supervisor of other types of factory class. Okay, and once I ask the factory class to produce something, then it knows that it can produce different sets of objects of different types. Okay, so in case I wanted A2 and B2, all right, this is what I want, then I choose factory number 2. In case I wanted A1 and B1, I will choose factory number 1. Okay, now those together still have the same structure, as in I'm going to have one from A over here and one from B over there. All right. But it depends. Does the client want this set coming in at the bottom over here, or does the client want that set, which comes at the bottom over here? Okay. So you can have the Samsung set, the Samsung speakers and the Samsung TV, or you can have the Sony set, the Sony speakers and the Sony TV set. Okay, so speakers and TVs obviously are two different types, but nonetheless, it is a set. And we're not talking about one set or one factory producing TVs and speakers. Another one is producing phones and computers. Okay, there's still entertainment sets in that they're producing speakers and speakers and phones. Sorry, speakers and TVs. I confused myself. All right. Now, I'm pretty sure everything that I've just said over here makes absolutely no sense. All right. But this is why we have the slides. Okay. In the slides, we have an example that is at the code level. Okay. The code that I have, I'm not necessarily asking you to create code in this course, but nonetheless, you need to be able to understand. You should be able to understand it. Okay, so let's take a look at an example situation, right? So I have a simple program and it's going to demonstrate the creation of different animal worlds. Okay, so animal world means I have an F1 and an F2. F1 is animal world number 1. F2 is going to be animal world number 2. Okay, and the F1 is talking about different continents. Okay, so we have an animal world that exists in North America. We have a different animal world that exists in Africa. Okay, just the way nature intended it to be. All right, the animals that you see in Africa naturally don't exist in North America, and there's animals that exist in North America that naturally don't exist in Africa. For example, a bison, okay, kind of like a buffalo, doesn't exist in Africa, and a lion doesn't exist in North America. Obviously, you see them in the zoos in North America, but that's because they ship them over there. It's not because they naturally exist in the North American continent. All right. So we have two different factories. Okay, like it was like the Samsung thing and the Sony thing. Okay. So let's begin, and we're gonna be drawing the class diagram. This is why I don't actually have the slideshow running per se. So because I'm gonna be switching back and forth between different screens. Okay, so we're going to begin first with the abstract continent factory. Okay, and the abstract continent factory, okay, what it's saying inside, it has two different requirements. It's stating that whoever is going to inherit from me you got to give me two things. In your world, you got to give me a herbivore and you got to give me a carnivore. Okay. And that, I mean, need to gotta have later on a factory that produces herbivores and a factory that produces carnivores. So this is what these functions are about. Okay. So the continent factory is gonna call on other factories to produce herbivores and produce carnivores. All right. So if you are the North America world, still gotta give me a herbivore and a carnivore. If you're the Africa world, herbivore, a carnivore. If you're the Asia world, so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Next up, we have the abstract class of herbivore. Okay. And in it, and also we have the abstract class of carnivores. Okay. So, I mean, we're kind of like we're setting the different classes that would exist in the different animal world. Okay. Whether it is in Africa or whatever. Okay. And here's the thing to note: if you look at the abstract class carnivore, it has a function called eat herbivore. So the good thing about it is that we're also setting different association between the different classes. Okay, the carnivore is gonna get to eat an object of type herbivore. Okay, what is the flavor? We'll figure it out in a moment. Okay, so again, let's go back here 1 second. Okay, we have a continent factory. Okay, and it's asking for a herbivore and a carnivore. So, and we have an abstract product A, an abstract product B, carnivore and herbivore. Okay, so again, if we go back up over here, all right, what this code that we were looking at, okay, we were actually looking at this one over here being the continent factory that says, you're gonna do North America, you're gonna do one time such and such and such. Okay, what are the products that are gonna exist? Herbivores and carnivores. Okay, well, all herbivores are of type herbivore, and this is the class of producing the abstract class for herbivore, and this is the abstract class for the carnivores. Okay, so let's step out here a second. Okay, now we're gonna draw it ourselves. Okay, so that we can follow it with each other. Let me just do the shift. I can just do this. So here we have continent factory, and this one is abstract. Okay, and then we also have, we said we're gonna have the herbivore and that's an ugly square. Carnivore. Okay. And like I said, I mean, every continent is going to have a herbivore and a carnivore, and there's actually an association between those two, and so it says eats. Okay. So if I go back again, now tell me if I do the switch, are you seeing now the PowerPoint? Everybody, are you seeing the PowerPoint slide now?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So again, what we've produced is this guy over here, and this one over there, and this one over there. So everybody, we following me on this so far? We're gonna build the class diagram bit by bit. Okay, everybody, we following because it's a very complicated design pattern. So I need everybody to follow me step by step. Okay, so far all we've done, we've just created the abstract classes. The only difference between this diagram and the one we had before is that we actually have a relationship between the two abstract classes. Okay, now when I have a relationship between the two abstract classes, I'm going to have a relationship between the two concrete ones as well later on, as we're going to get to see. Okay. So where we were here. Okay, so we looked at the abstract class herbivore, abstract class carnivore. Okay, now let's get to the details. So now we're gonna create the actual concrete factory classes. One of which is the Africa factory. The other one is the America factory. Both of them, if you notice, they extend the continent factory. So remember, we had the continent factory. And then now we're going to have the Africa factory. And also the, what's the America factory. Okay. So what's inside of them? Let's remember what was inside of them, huh? Before I look at what's inside, let me just take you back again to one of the other classes. Remember that the continent factory says you gotta give me a herbivore and you gotta give me a carnivore, okay? And you gotta implement those two functions. Now, if you were wondering back in your 120 days or even your 220 days, what's the point with all these abstract stuff? Now, it's kind of like a rule. You're setting a rule, okay? So if this was class human, okay, and you want to say, all right, you want to produce specific types of humans, okay, it's like man, woman, girl, boy, fine, but you got to give me, you know, abstract, you know, for example, eyes, abstract mouth, and so on, because every human has to have eyes, they have to have mouth, and so on and so forth, okay? So how are these factories, the concrete factories, the Africa one and the America one are handling this? Okay, let's see. Okay, so the Africa one, for create herbivore, it's producing an object of type wild beast, and wild beast is of type herbivore. And for the carnivore, it's producing an object of type lion, and lion is a type of carnivore. As for the America factory, for its herbivore, it's producing an object of type bison, which exists in North America, and that's the herbivore. And for your carnivore, it's a wolf. Okay. All right. Now let's just step out here for a second. Let's go back again to this one over here. All right. So what we really had, let me just do like this. We produced two concrete ones. One is Africa, and the other one is America. Okay. And also, what we also have is the following. Let me just get a different color over here. For herbivores, we said we have the bison, and we had, what was it, wild beast, right? As for the carnivores, we have two. We had the wolf, and we had the, what was it, lion. Okay, so America is going to be producing the bison, it's going to be producing the wolf, whereas, let me pick a different color here. Here we go, purple. Africa is going to be producing lion, and it's going to be producing wild beast. Okay, let me go back to, oh, where is it? There we go. And I know what you're thinking, okay? I know what you're thinking, because you said, you know, a couple of slides ago, we looked at this and it said, carnivore has got to eat something, okay? It's got to eat a herbivore. So how did it actually do it over here? We don't actually have an eat function. Uh-oh, what's wrong? What about over here? Okay, there we go. So to the actual specifics, so for the wild beast, it's empty. It's just an object, an empty object that we're creating. And for the actual, and this is obviously this is for Africa. Okay, this is for Africa. And for the lion, which extends the carnivore, it says it eats a herbivore. Okay, and that herbivore should be a wild beast. And now we're wondering, but I didn't actually write here wild beast. Why didn't I just write here wild beast? All right, because I might end up, somebody's got to be concerned that I might end up having the lion eat the bison, which exists in a different continent. Okay, well, with the abstract factory design pattern, this is going to get taken care of, and we're going to see how in a moment. Okay, next up, in the America world, this is the America world, we have the bison. It's just an empty herbivore object, okay? And for the carnivore, which is the wolf, okay, again, it just says I'm going to eat a herbivore. It didn't say I'm going to eat the bison. And again, might be concerned that, well, what happens if it might end up with an invalid set where the wolf is actually eating the wild beast. Again, this is not going to happen, okay? This is not going to happen. Nonetheless, here we go, all right? When you see the system outs over here, they're the same exact code, all right? And it's saying this dot get class, and that is the lion. Eats is going to print out the name of the class that we get from the herbivore, okay? It's the H, right? And when we actually execute get class, every time for the lion, it's going to be wild beast, and we'll see that how. And every time for the wolf, it's always going to be a bison when it prints, and this obviously is going to print wolf. Okay. Type. So let's just step out here for a second. Okay. So now the code itself says that the wolf is going to eat a herbivore. The lion is going to eat a herbivore. It didn't say the lion is going to eat a wild beast. It didn't say the lion is going to eat a bison. But as we'll see, all right, when we got the factory, the continent factory itself, whatever concrete type we chose, it is the one that is going to take care of the types that is being produced. Okay, so if I said America, it's going to produce a bison and a wolf, and hence the wolf itself, every time it is set up along with the bison, because we're creating the set together, its only thing that it can eat would be the bison. Similarly, when I call upon the Africa factory and it says produce the object, it always produces lion and wild beast. So when the lion is referring to its continent's herbivore, it always keeps getting the wild beast, and it's never going to end up getting the bison. Okay, and this is how we control it. This is how we control it. All right, so the client is going to come over here. What the client is going to do is going to ask for a continent factory. All it knows, it has an abstract continent factory object, but then with the magic of polymorphism, it chooses from the inside which specific factory object should I create. Now, again, let me just move here for a second. So here is my client code. Okay, and the client code has from the outside, because we want to keep it consistent. This is one of the good things about polymorphism. I don't have to change the code in the client every time I change the concrete object. I just refer to the abstract object, which is continent factory. Okay, and then in the inside, I'm going to have two objects, one at a time, of course. Okay, I have the America factory, and then I have the Africa factory. So one point, I'm going to take this over here. I'm going to move it inside over there. Okay, and when I have it and I say go ahead, create your worlds, it produces what was it, for the herbivore, produces the wild beast, and for the, was it wild beast? Yes. And for the carnivore, it produced the lion. Okay, let me just remove this. Okay, so At some other point, I might take this out. Then later on, I'm going to take this, going to create an object, this concrete object, going to put it inside over here. I'm going to execute, go ahead and create your world. It's going to create two objects. One, a herbivore. Whoops. One is a herbivore, one is a carnivore. And the herbivore is going to be bison, whereas the carnivore is going to be wolf. Okay. And this is what it produces. And like I said, and this is why the wolf always ends up eating the bison. It's never going to end up eating the wild beast, and vice versa with the lion. Okay. So let me just move back here for a second. Where is it? All right. So this is my client class, produces animal worlds. Okay. I have a reference to a herbivore object, a carnivore object, because this is the result that we're giving back to the client. Okay. And then one time I have this animal world constructor. It takes, remember, I said the client, it looks like it's dealing with a continent factory. And it doesn't know what's inside. Okay. Continent factory over here. And I say, yeah, Mr. Factory, go ahead, create your carnivore, go ahead, create your herbivore. And then I can actually run the function that was inside, which is run the food chain. So it executes the eat function. So whatever animal world I was in, its carnivore is going to end up eating its herbivore. Okay. Right. This is the setup. Next up, the actual, sorry, this is the client, but now let's actually do the work. Okay. So one time I'm going to have this continent factory, which I've given to the client. So this is my client, continent factory. One time I'm going to put inside Africa factory. Okay. I'm going to put inside an Africa factory. Okay. So when I say Africa factory, go ahead, run your world chain and go ahead, create your objects. We'll go back again to this world. So this over here, when it's coming in, is being passed in from the client. On the outside is saying continent factory, but in the inside was actually an Africa factory. And so the Africa factory, when I execute the create carnivore and create herbivore of the Africa factory, what does it produce? It produces the lion and it produces the wild beast. Okay. Similarly, later on, and obviously, yeah, when I execute the eat, okay, remember this is the lion, this is my carnivore, this is a wild beast, this is my herbivore. Okay. A little later on, I decide, no, I don't want to have the America one. Oh, let me keep this over here. The Africa one, I want to create the America one. Okay. So again, I keep the same one. Okay. And now instead I put, this is my continent and I just erased it by mistake. Factory and America one, I'm going to put it inside America factory. And then again, the rest of the code looks exactly the same. All right. So when I execute run food chain, when I tell the constructor to go ahead and create the herbivore and the carnivore, remember what was actually inside is actually the America one. So this one then ends up producing the wolf, and this one then ends up producing the wild beast. Oh no, it wasn't wild beef. Sorry, the bison. Sorry. Okay, and the bison is that herbivore. The wolf is that carnivore, and so the eat is going to have the wolf eating the bison. So the only thing now actually that is left in the diagram, what the client is actually getting, okay, is going to get an object of this, and it gets an object of that. But on top of that, it's getting what's it called? An animal world object. One time it's an America world, one time it's an Africa world, and that animal world is then actually connected to, sorry, no, wait. The animal world was actually the client. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. So this was in my code called animal world. Okay. One time it gets a herbivore, and one time it gets the carnivore. This is the only thing that is left at this point. So here, how it goes. The client calls upon its continent factory object, and through the magic of polymorphism, okay, one of these objects are going to be inside, and from the outside it says continent factory, but from the inside it's either America or Africa. And so when we go ahead and run the constructors and the methods, okay, it produces, each one produces the one that is associated with, okay. And so the each function that we have over here is automatically set between those two over here. And then finally, what is it that I produce? Because remember, at the end of the day, it's a creational design pattern. So I'm actually trying to give something to the client. Those blue lines at the end are my actual, what's it called? Products that I'm giving back to my client. Okay. All right. So I'm not sure how many of you I've lost. I'm pretty sure I've lost a few of you. Any questions about this so far? We have plenty of exercise we're gonna get to, so don't worry about this. We have plenty of exercise, but first let's get through, just make sure that we do understand. Anybody have any questions? Did I lose everybody? Can somebody write that? If you have questions, let me know before I move on. Okay. Everybody else understands. Just write, I understand. Everything is clear. Just let me know that you're there. There's 16 of you. Well, 15. All right. Okay, so moving on now. Okay. So first time around, when I ran the food chain, okay, over here. Oops, no. Okay. What I had was an animal world. So what is actually going to be printing out when I run it? It says lion eats the wild beast. Whereas the next time it was an America factory producing the America type objects, and it produces this line over here says wolf eats bison. Okay. All right. Now, going back again to the difference between this and just the regular factory, discard. There's two characteristics that define them or differentiate between them. First of all, with the abstract factory, I just have the client deal with one factory or a factory which produces one type of object. So this is my factory, and this is the object that I want. Okay. With the abstract factory, I actually have a level above. Okay. So I actually have multiple factories, and all of them are going to be produced by one abstract factory. Okay. By the way, this was concrete, whereas this one is abstract. Okay. Now, why is it that I actually have this setup over here? Because those are going to be producing different sets. Okay. They're producing different sets. Okay. This one produces such and such and such, but the sets themselves have the same pattern. Okay. So be A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. Okay, now the specific type of the A and the specific type of B and C might be different in this group versus in this group versus in that group. All right, so here's another thing is that in the concrete classes that you see at the bottom, okay, I'm also not just producing 3 different A's, no, I'm producing different types of objects. Got an A and a B and a C. Okay, if I go back again to the factory, the regular factory is producing an object of type A. Had it produced more, it's still the same thing. Even if it produced more in the same shot. If it produced it in one shot, okay, or produced one object at a time, it's still the same, right? Same concept, okay? That it doesn't have different objects that are being produced with relationship between those objects, and also doesn't have an abstract layer on top of them. All right. Okay. All right. So let me give you an example. Let me give you an example, and let's see what you're gonna do with it. Okay. So I have I want to have something called like I know, a restaurant creator. What is this? Okay, or a meal creator. I shouldn't say called restaurant. Let's just say a meal creator. Okay. The meal, a meal has you know, three things to it. It has an appetizer. It has a you know, main dish, and it has a what's it called, a dessert. Okay. Okay, let's just say we have 3 different cuisines, 3 different types of meal. The first of which is Italian. For the appetizer, you know, it has maybe a salad. I'm just making things up here. Pasta for the main dish, and dessert, maybe gelato. Okay, for French. Oh, what do the people have French? Maybe I know they have cheese for dessert. Yeah, it's called the filet mignon, and I don't know what they have for it's called bread. I don't know, appetizer. Okay. All right. Well, let's do another one, and then we have the Arab meal. What appetizers do we have? Hummus, maybe. Okay. Main dish suggestions. I know dessert. We have kunafa. Suggestions for main dish. Anybody? Main dish. What's your favorite main dish? Low?
Koshari, Dr. Koshari.
Koshari? All right, something more immediate than koshari. Okay, I have another suggestion. Kapsa. All right, let's just call it kapsa. All right. So this is the question that I'm giving you, and now I want you to use obviously the abstract factory design pattern to produce this you know, this situation over here. Okay, so that the meal creator can create meals of different types. Now, obviously, the thing is you can't mix and match. Okay, you can't have a salad with kapsa and then cheese. Okay, at this point. Okay, so go ahead, create the class diagram representing the specific solution for this specific problem that I've given you. Okay. Now, in the exam, obviously, I'm not going to tell you this is a abstract factory design pattern. It's going to be up to you to decide that. And then you have to write down in the paper that this, Professor, I'm gonna be using an abstract factory design pattern, okay? So I know it's not just a stroke of luck what you've actually drawn, okay? I'm gonna give you a few minutes to try to hash one out. So we're gonna be doing exercises after every design pattern, but also after we finish the design pattern chapters, we're gonna be doing more exercises. Now, the reason is, it's obviously quite easy every time I give you a design pattern that you know that this exercise is about that particular design pattern. But at the end, when we finished all the different design patterns, I think there's 11 of them in total, right? You're not gonna get any clue in the exam what type or even flavor of design pattern you need to use. So I have to put you in the same situation where I give you a question, right? And we've already covered all 11 design patterns. And then you would say, I'm going to choose this one. No, I'm going to choose that one. And based on what? Well, the answer is coming in about 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes. So you can then compare your answer to mine. If you want to submit an answer to me by email, you're more than welcome to do so. Anybody finished yet? Not yet? Okay, I'll give you a few more minutes. By the way, this example that you're solving right now, that was actually a midterm question at one point. Come on, guys. It's a very easy question. Please tell me somebody has to solve it at this point. This is actually easier than the one we had in the slides. Hmm. All right, one more minute. All right. Okay, so time's up. Okay. I draw the class diagram. I'm just waiting now for you to tell me what's inside the boxes, okay? So let's do it this way. I'm gonna begin here. This is my client. Okay? Okay, so what should I be drawing in this one over here? What's the name of that class? Another hint. What do you think should we name it? The one that produces all the meals.
Meal factory.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. What are the three types of meals that we're creating? So what should I write over here? Suggestions? Well, it shouldn't be a suggestion, should be pretty obvious.
Appetizer.
No, no, not yet. We're still deciding the different types of meals. Okay, rather than what's in the meals. Okay, we're not talking about the product. So whoever was speaking, I'm not sure who it was. Okay, so in this side, we're setting up the factories. In this side, we're setting up the actual products that we're creating. So what is a factory? Animal factory, so Africa factory, America factory. What are the actual products? The bison, the lion, the wild beast, and so on. Okay, so what are the different factories that we have? Hint, hint. What are the different? So this is a meal factory. What are the different meals that it created? Hmm?
Like we have the main dish, dessert.
Exactly, exactly. No, Osama, I'm not sure who was. So we have, we're talking the type of the meal, yeah, not what's in the meal. Okay, you're still confusing these together. So first one is Arab. Okay, second one was or say the was it? Yeah, Italian or French, and then the last one, Italian. Okay, very good. Okay, so the French, the Italian, as you can, I give you already a hint, is going to be producing from each type of product one object. I know it's getting a little messy, but I'm using the colors for this. The French, from each type of object, one. Okay, and finally the Arab, for each type of object, again another one. Okay, so what is actually producing for the Arab meal? Okay, now before we talk about the specifics of the Arab meal and the French, so what are the different components of the meal? Answers, anybody? Yep, exactly. What was that, Osama? Okay, so appetizer, main dish, and finally dessert. Okay, so for the Arab, the appetizer was, I think it was hummus, kapsa for the main dish, and dessert was kunaf. Okay, for the French in the blue, we said bread, we said the filet for the main dish, and for the dessert, I think it was cheese. And finally, for the Italian, salad for appetizer, pasta for the main dish, and then finally, gelato. Okay, and the client gets to have at the end access to each one of these types of objects. So one from this, and one from that. All right. Sounds good, everyone? I hope that was pretty clear. It's a very, very straightforward thing. Okay, so here on this side, you judge, you create the different types of worlds, so to speak. And then over here, you create the actual concrete, and on top of it, the general type that combines all of them. And it is a concrete object, and on top of them is the concrete. Sorry, the abstract class. Huh? Why is client connected to meal parts? Because at the client itself, okay, is asking for a meal creator. Okay, and it wants an appetizer, a main dish, and a dessert. Okay, I mean that's what you get as the client at the end. Okay, you want Italian, you want French, you want Arab. So what you actually get, so it's a creational design pattern, means it's the client is asking the abstract factor design pattern to produce and create these objects, and once you've created them, bring them back to me so that I can have access to them and I can do whatever I want with them. Okay, obviously eat them. All right. Okay, guys, any questions about this? Ranim, Ghada, who else is there? Ahmad Diab, Bayan, everybody. Fad, Mishal, Mariam, everybody. Is that clear? Yasmin, Rima, Reem Khoja, Usama. Yeah. Okay, so it's again, like I said, it's very important. Now, like I said, at the end, when we're finished with all of the design pattern, then we're going to have exercise to simulate kind of like the condition that you be in the exam, because it makes it quite easy it makes it quite easy when your professor's already telling you like this is a design pattern X, let's do an exercise on it. So it's obvious which design pattern you need to implement. Okay, but it's not that easy once you have a collection of 11 and you got to choose one of them. So we're going to come back and visit this again, these exercises, and probably visit them even once more in a quiz before we do the midterm and shoot them again in the final. Type one more design pattern, yes or no? If you stay silent, that means yes. سكوت علامة الرضا. One more design pattern. Okay, so Ahmed says yes. So that means everybody wants to say no, but they're just afraid to say no. Uh, all right. So based on because you didn't say no, then I'm assuming you said yes. So okay, everybody looks like they want another design pattern. So let's go for it. All right. Ask and you shall receive. And again, before I just you're gonna give us one more, even if we say no. Yeah, that was actually true, Rima. I was gonna give you one more, anyways. I just, it's all about attitude. I want to see like the right type of attitude. Like, yes, doctor. Yes, this is so much what you want to have. Give us one more. Give us two more. This is the sort of thing that I wanted to hear. Disappointingly, this is not what I'm actually hearing. But anyways, okay. So one last design pattern, and this is the last of the creational design pattern. It's called the singleton design pattern. Okay, and so the singleton design pattern, here the issue is a bit different than the factory design pattern and the abstract factory design pattern, because here the issue is that I want to create an object, okay, of a class, okay, but as I create it, I want to have, I want to enforce that there's only one instance of that object actually being created. Okay. How do I do that? Well, I make the object private, the sort of constructor private, define a private static attribute for it, and define a public accessor for it. So anybody who wants it has to go through the static class. Again, that probably makes absolutely no sense. Here's the class diagram. Okay, here's my client. The client wants to produce an object of this class. Okay, so that class is going to produce the object, but as soon as it produces it, it then enforces that only one object is going to be produced. Okay, now how are we going to do this? Okay, let me just switch back over here. Whiteboard. Let me clear this. All right, so remember the difference between static and non-static. So the non-static, as I remember, I explained to you in this class, this is the object-oriented world, okay? The static is kind of like the old world that we didn't really like, okay? So the non-static is our objects. Oops. And the statics are the one that stays in our classes, okay? So the trick here is I'm gonna have a client. Okay, the client is going to access a class. Okay, the class has a static accessor. Okay, so it's kind of like a static variable. That static variable is pointing to an object. This is class Y. Okay, and it's going to be pointing to the object Y. Okay, so because if I produce an object, I need to be able to connect to it somehow. Okay, how do I connect to it? I connect to it through the static variable that is actually pointing to the object. Okay, so what's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's just going to be a bit slow with me here for a second. Okay. No, that's not what I had in mind. Just give me a second. Let me erase this for a second. Okay. So the class, it produces, the class Y is going to produce an object of type Y. But unlike every time when you see something like, say, student S equals new student, and then you got the constructor, what happens is that the class student produces an object of type S, and then there's no connection between them. But so what we want to do is we want to put the word static in front, and the static makes this object S being connected as a variable of the actual class static. You get what's happening here? So the object student is now belonging to the class student. Okay, right? And this is very normal. This is this is kind of like a self-association. Remember when we said self-association? I have a course, and a course can be a prerequisite to another course. In other words, I have a class called course, and it's a prerequisite to another class called course. So that's absolutely fine. Except for this time, I'm not having a class accessing another class or holding a variable of another class. I'm having an object holding a variable for different of another object of the same time. I'm having the class itself hold a reference to an object of its own type. Okay, so let me go back and erase all of this. Okay, so this variable Y is going to be static. Okay, in other words, there's going to be a connection here, just like there was over there. Okay, and then finally, when the client wants to get a hold of this object Y, it can get to it through the actual class and says, Mr. Class Y, can you please give me access to the object Y? And what we're going to do now is that we're going to make Y be the only one that can, the class Y be the only one that can access the object Y by making this Y private. Okay, private of the class Y. So static and private. Okay, so anybody else, client 1, client 2, client 3, right? They have to wait for the first one to finish so that the second one can come in. And then the second one, when they're finished, the third one can come in. Okay, and they access the same object as such. Okay, and we don't end up producing more. Now, there's a little trick that we're still missing. Okay, when I'm looking at this over here, all right, so here I'm going to create the object, going to make it static, going to make it belong to the class. I'm going to also make it private so that nobody else can connect to it other than the class. But here's a little trick. The constructor in my class, I make it private. This is probably something you haven't seen before. Now, a constructor is nothing but a function, first and foremost. So when you make the constructor private, nobody from the outside can access the constructor of that class other than the class itself. So in other words, only the class itself will can produce objects of its own type. Okay, there is no client outside that can go my class singleton or S equals new my class. Nobody can do that. The only one that can do that is just the class itself. And so in the class itself, I'm going to produce it. Here it is. okay? And gonna have some sort of a modifier so that when a client coming in from the outside wants to use it, they have to use it through this class over here, okay? So here's an example runtime, okay? I'm gonna produce an object runtime, okay, make it static and private, okay? Any client who wants it, they have to go through the class runtime, okay, with the capital R dot get runtime, okay? And so now that object is returned to the client, or an access to it is returned to the client. Okay, it just keeps flipping on me for a second. All right. And as you can see, the constructor over here is made private so that that client or any other client can't come and ask for that object itself. Okay. This line over here, you're gonna ask, well, who actually executes that line? That line is describing a variable. When Java loads up, the Java virtual machine runs those variable lines to initiate the software. Okay, so this is going to be executed one time and one time only on the start of the software, which then produces the object runtime, which is actually given to the class runtime. And any client who wants that object runtime, which we know nobody else can produce objects of that type, if they want access to it, they have to go through the class runtime for it. All right. Any questions about this, guys? That's the last design pattern for today, and that's the last creational design pattern. Any questions? Was that clear, the singleton design pattern? Is that clear, everyone? Yes, no? You have any questions? Ask. Okay. So that's it for today. Inshallah, I'll be seeing you next week. Goodbye, everyone.